Hello, welcome to another episode of Unlocked, where we talk about unlocking the potential of people. Today, I have Jennifer Loper on the call. Jennifer is a longtime professional in the marketing industry. She's been doing marketing, advertising for about 35 years. So she's been around the space for a long time. Specifically on this call, though, we're going to talk not about marketing, but about hiring. We're going to talk about what it means to have open communication, open dialogue, to be curious, and to really get to the person in front of you. And the difference between getting to the person in front of you and not getting to the person in front of you, and understanding if there's a good match, understanding about what does it mean to have the conversation that enables success and liberation to happen on both sides of the table. She has a bit of a story at the beginning talking about her college career and what happened with that. And that's going to spark the rest of the conversation. So listen to that story and then follow along with the conversation. There are some good bits of wisdom interspersed throughout this conversation, but that's what it is straight up conversation. So I hope you enjoy this one. And here we come, Jennifer. Hello, Jennifer. What's going on?
Hey, Scott, how are you? Delighted to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. These talks are fun. I enjoy. I will tell you that I started this podcast out as a way to kind of build my brand and kind of, generate some non-threatening conversations, sales conversations. People get to know me, and then maybe they'll hire me one day. You know how much business I've got out of my podcast?
How much?
Probably none. I mean, from direct, right? From like direct stuff. And people out there, podcast people are like, well, then you're doing it wrong, Scott. And I'm just like, you know what? That's okay. But it has built my network. Maybe some indirect, but anyway, this isn't about me. I'm just saying that
I love it though.
these conversations like are the reason I keep doing this because I'm meeting new people all the time that I never met before. And
Yes.
that's why I keep doing this because you know what? I love meeting new people and learning stuff from you guys.
I think I think what you do, I doing it all day, every day would be like my dream job. I just find it so interesting that there are so many different people and different things to do. I was actually talking about this with my one of my colleagues yesterday, and I said one of the things when I get on a flight is I look around and I'm thinking, everybody on this flight is going somewhere. They're going to a meeting, sometimes not business travel, maybe personal travel, but you're flying out on a Tuesday morning and flying to a city where probably, there's a lot of businesses there, people going. And I look around and think they all have a job. Like, what do they do? And how did they get there? And what's their experience? And so I think it's fascinating. I think I would love to interview you and ask you who are the most interesting people you've met and what's the most like surprised you've been. So I can only imagine the information you've gained and the lessons that you've learned from talking to people and being open to them and listening.
Yeah, it's fun. And I'll go back and I'll listen to old episodes because I'm relaunching them in various ways now. And I'm like, oh, I totally forgot about that interview. It was so good. So I'm getting to do that. Let's start out with, so you spoke about stories. You were talking about stories. Everybody has a story. Everybody was like, they're on this plane, they're going somewhere, they're doing something. What are they about? Where do they come from? What's going on in their lives? And I want to hear about your story. And where, like, how you got to where you are. You said you have this thing about this non-traditional college career path you went through. That intrigues me. So tell me about that.
Sure. So I think it's non-traditional. Perhaps for your audience or people that, will hear this, they may say, "Oh gosh, that's really more traditional now." But my path, well, first off, my siblings and I, we were the first generation to go to college. So my mom was a first generation American, and my dad was a blue collar guy. Great people. They they believed in education, but they weren't the generation that had a college education. So we always knew that we would go to college, and it was a privilege. And it was something that was going to be, different and celebrated, and we knew it would be hard work, but it was important to my parents, and they saw that as a path of, hey, you can do more than we did. Not that they weren't grateful for what they did, but they wanted us to have more opportunity. So my path was non-traditional in the sense that I kind of had a little detour. So my dad died young. He was 45. He had a massive heart attack. And my youngest sister was 11. I was 15. My older sister was 19 and my brother was 20. Now, my brother and sister were in college. And here's my mom. She was a secretary. She had always worked, but didn't have the kind of job to support four kids and all the things. And so there was a shift of, hey, we still believe in education, but it's not going to be a straight path. Like, you guys are going to have to work. And it was a little bit of a shift. And my siblings, my older siblings, were already working through school and that kind of thing. But so, and then just I would say, trauma of that event. So, one day I had one life, and the next morning the life was totally different. So the level of support, emotional and all the things, support that my mom could give us as we continued on, was just a little bit more limited, and she was grieving and all of those things. So I started out and was at a large university, University of Missouri in Columbia. That's where my older siblings had gone. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. And, God bless my mom, rest her soul. She was like, just go and you'll figure it out. And so I didn't have probably the best first year, let's just say that. And I'd been a good student. I was not someone that didn't study and didn't work hard, but I didn't do well. And so I was like, okay, this is not tenable. And I came back to Kansas City, and I went to a school here, UMKC, University of Missouri Columbia, because they're tied together in that system. And I had an individual look at my resume, or my transcript, pardon me. And you got to remember, this is like in the mid 80s. So he looked at it, he goes, oh gosh, this is terrible. You'll never graduate from college.
That's encouraging.
I was like, huh, okay, well, I don't like that answer. And I think I can. Like, I really do think I can. So I went across, I walked across the street. Scott, you've got, I don't know how old you are. I'm sure I'm older than you, but
I'm
you don't have a
24.
cell.
Can
There
you
we
tell?
go.
I'm 24.
Yes. So, you don't have cell phones and all of that. So I just literally walked across the street to Rockhurst College. It's Rockhurst University now. And I asked if I could meet with an advisor. And they said, well, yeah, actually, he's got time now, which is strange. But, normally you've got to have a little bit more time. So I spoke to him, and he said, hey, this doesn't look ideal, but I will help you chart a path to get you back on track. And that, Scott, was a turning point. And a turning point from the standpoint of a lesson that I learned that I hope that I am able to give back today. Just listening to people and hearing people and trying to understand where they are, meeting them where they are, and giving them guidance. Now, he told me, he said, you've got to do the work. I can chart the path and help you, but you've got to do the work. So he said, you've got to go to a community college, get your GPA up, you apply here. So I did all of those things, and I ended up graduating with honors, and I won a few awards and that kind of thing. But it was an 8-year path because I was working and going to school. But I got to tell you, I never felt like I couldn't do it. I had other people telling me I couldn't do it. I had other people say, oh my gosh, why would you do this? You're going to be behind your peers. You're going to start a full-time job in a real job, and you're already going to be behind. I just never felt like that was a detriment. I felt like this is a path I'm on. I'm going to do it. And even if it takes me a long time, I'm going to be 27 regardless. Hopefully, God willing, I'm going to make it. And I'm either going to be 27 with a degree or 27 without a degree. And so that's kind of where that non-traditional path comes into play.
So how does that shape? You're a business owner, you're a leader. How does that experience shape the way you lead, shape how you hire, shape how you build teams inside your company?
Yes. I'm not the business owner, just to be clear, but
Oh, sorry.
we no no
Minor
no
detail.
no worries. No, but I am but it it is I am in the position to lead the organization, and I got to tell you, I think it is having that experience has led me to have a very open mind related to colleagues, hiring, clients, and how that's manifested here at C3 is we have a really interesting group in terms of the type of work we do. So we are a brand marketing company. We work primarily in the restaurant industry, and we create custom programs for families with children, and we create entertainment. And our goal is to bring joy to families. It's wonderful. Like, you can't not be happy doing what we do. And so we have our creative staff. So we have industrial designers, we have illustrators, we have art directors, we have insights and research, we have account management, we have operations, we have a warehouse, we have a finance team. So all of these things. And it's so interesting because we would have people come to us and say, "Gosh, I love to work here. I think this is so interesting. I'd also like to continue to be a part time professor at the Kansas City Art Institute. I wonder what that could look like." And I'm like, "I don't know, but let's talk about it." So I think just that openness, Scott, to having a conversation and hearing where people are and what they want to accomplish has allowed us to bring in these incredible resources in a way that if we had been very hard line, for lack of a better term, about nope, you've got to be a Monday through Friday 8 to 5 person, and you can't that we can't go out of that scope, would have limited us in having some of the most talented, dedicated, loyal colleagues that we have today.
So then why don't more people do it? Why are they so strict in that clock in, clock out? I want you in the office. I think COVID has shifted that a
Yes,
bit, some of that
yes.
mentality, to where, there's kids running around the background and it's acceptable when before it would have been like, oh, get out of the
Yeah.
camera. Um, so why don't, so there's still some laggers out there that are
Yep.
holding firm to their traditional way of hiring. Why?
I love this question, and I don't know if I know the answer. I think my answer is rooted in that experience I just talked to you about from the college transcript conversation. I think the difference between talking to one advisor and the other advisor was that first advisor was looking at it in terms of this is the system, and the system doesn't work well when somebody comes to me with a transcript with a really bad GPA. And perhaps it's just the limitation of thinking outside the system. Perhaps it's going to be more work for me if I have to figure out a different path for this individual. Whereas I think the conversation I had across the street, that individual just may have been inherently, just their nature was maybe more entrepreneurial or more flexible, or kind of more of a growth mindset. Like, yeah, this isn't ideal, but I know we can figure something out. And so perhaps in the hiring process, if an individual wants to go outside the system, perhaps it's just this thinking of, oh my gosh, this creates more work for me, or what if everybody wants to do it? And I think those kind of questions, and we have to think about all those things, but I think those things may dictate the next step versus, hey, that's something we're going to have to figure out, but let's continue the conversation and explore what could be.
I think so. This sounds to me like a principle when I'm coaching people that I call self preservation,
Okay.
where what am I afraid of
Ah,
losing? What am I trying to hide? What am I trying to prove? And a lot of that comes down to the idea of being either for myself or against you. And
Interesting.
and that whole principle could weigh into that based on what you're saying. That's what I'm gathering from what you're saying, is that it seemed like the first individual was for himself, him or her. It was,
Yes.
how's this going to impact my workload? How is this going to impact what I'm doing? How's this going to impact the things I've built or we've built here? You're, you don't fit, and you don't fit nicely in the system that we've built here, and we don't want to change it because that's going to put us out, and we're going to have to do some other things. Or maybe we don't want you. Maybe I'm against you because I don't really want your type of person here. So
Yeah. Yes, could be.
it's more that mindset. The other person was more for you, not for themselves,
Yes.
not against you. They were for you in that they listened, they were open minded, and they considered that there's an opportunity maybe here that maybe we haven't thought about. What if we did this? And what if we tried that? So I think that there's maybe less self preservation happening on the other side.
That's interesting. And I do think, as a small company that is entrepreneurial, our founder and CEO, straight up entrepreneur. I mean, the things he did to start the company, I would never do. I would not max out credit cards. I would not take that risk. And I'm so grateful for people that do that. But what he's created for us is what I call, and we're all entrepreneurs. He's allowed us to be the entrepreneurs within the entrepreneurial framework that he's created. And he's the first person to say, so the example I gave of the individual who he's actually been here over 10 years now, was the professor at the Kansas City Art Institute, and then also a part-time person here at C3. He's actually now a full professor at the Art Institute, which we could not be more delighted, and he's just an amazing human. But he's just one of several stories like that at C3. But I think Bob Cutler, our founder and CEO, he allowed us to not only be entrepreneurial with our clients and helping them as it relates to building programs to connect with families and children and creating these really awesome, unique, custom entertainment pieces. He expanded that out to, we can be entrepreneurial with how we run our business. And so I think, to your point, he wasn't thinking about it as it related to his Get With My program. It's like, I'm entrepreneurial and I'm open to all kinds of ideas and things that aren't traditional. Let's just have the conversation. And I think if people would just commit to the next step versus, oh my gosh, we're going to get this person in and they want to work 30 hours a week, and then everybody's going to want to work 30 hours a week, and how's that going to work? Maybe if, and I'm just thinking of this off the top of my head, this could be a terrible idea, but maybe if one is resistant to going outside of the box, so to speak, maybe if one just commits to, hey, maybe the next step is just to have a conversation and just learn a little bit more about what this person desires and what their skills are, and the value they could bring to us, our clients, and our organization. Because that doesn't feel so much like what you're talking about, where it's and what I was talking about, where it's like an all or nothing. So maybe just the next step of having the conversation could be something that propels people forward.
Yeah, nobody says we have to get married. Let's just
Right.
let's at least just maybe have the conversation and see what happens and just agree. And this is where the communication piece is so important, because if I'm not
100%.
clear about that expectation, then somebody's going to be disappointed. Either you're going to
Yes.
get disappointed because maybe you thought something else was happening. We were going to get married. And I'm like, whoa, why are you thinking we're going to get married? I was just having a conversation, So
Yes.
I think that there's something important there with the clarity of expectation and communication you're having there.
The other thing too that I think about, and I haven't been in this position because I've been at C3 going on 18 years, so I haven't applied for a job online, and I think everything is online. That missed opportunity of you've got everything has to go through the online portal. And so can you even talk to a real person initially? I don't know. And if you can't, now you can for a company like ours, because we have a contact, and you can contact us through our website, and a real person would have a conversation with you. But a large organization, so I'm going to tell one quick story that illustrates this. It was, let's see, my oldest son's almost 25, so this would have been 24 years ago. I wanted to take a break from advertising. I had him, he was small. And so I said, I loved what I did, but the 50, 55 hours a week, and we didn't have remote work. None of that was, this is the late 90s. And so I wanted to work part-time, and Nordstrom had opened in Kansas City, and I'd worked in the service. I've worked in the service business my whole life, love retail. And so I went to apply. I went to talk to the manager, and I said, this is what I'd like to do part-time. And he said, gosh, we don't hire part-time people. I said, tell me more about that. And he said, well, we want professional salespeople. This is a professional environment. It's a professional job. We want to have individuals see it that way. And what we've discovered is when we hire full-time people, this is their career, and it's the level of commitment and maturity that we want. I said, I love that, and I totally support it. I said, I'm 33 years old or whatever it was. You can give me all the bad shifts. You put me, have me work Friday night. Nobody wants to work Friday night. Have me work Monday night. Nobody wants to work Monday night. And just put me in the department where nobody wants to work. On the nights they don't want to be there, and just give me a shot. And if I don't produce, we'll just call it quits. So Scott, I worked there for nearly 7 years. And I was able, now I had to produce on my end. It wasn't like, hey, we're going to give you a chance and let you go. But my point in all of that is, what does that look like today if you can't have a conversation with an organization? It would have been a missed opportunity for Nordstrom, and it would have been a missed opportunity for me. It was a very win-win situation. I was an excellent salesperson and created a clientele that really helped people. And I was able to do the things I wanted to do. And this goes back to your point about clear communication. I wanted to be able to be home with my son, have extra money, have money to do extra things. And so it was a win-win. But what would that look like today? I don't know.
What's interesting to me is the question you asked. That stood out to me a lot as something that was the catalyst for that to happen, because that individual said, no, we don't hire part-time people. And you could have said, okay, thank you very much, and left. But you didn't. You said the key question, I hope everybody takes away from this interview, is tell me more about that. You were curious about perspective, and you opened the dialogue. You had that person, by asking that question, and I heard Adam Grant say something about this too, who does about organizational health, if you're not familiar with Adam Grant. But it's he said, by asking that question, you're asking the person to challenge their own thoughts and to rethink their own stance on something. And you're not causing a defensive state of like, are you sure? You're not accusing them of that. You're just saying, tell me more about that. Like,
yeah,
give me your reasoning. Yes. And that opened up dialogue and conversation that then enabled you both to go, okay, well, let's try it and see what happens. So I love that you asked that question.
Well, it's funny. I've never made that connection, but from that experience. But it's interesting because I will tell my team, and I will remind myself when we are talking to our clients or potential clients, seeking to understand in a true way, seeking to understand. And I think you made a great point, Scott. If you come off as, I want to get you in I want to do a gotcha on on asking the question, but truly I'm seeking to understand. That's where the magic happens. And that's where, if a client calls us, and I remember this early on, and says, "Hey, this program isn't working for us. We're gonna not go forward." And at that moment, oh my gosh, as the agency, all the things. Oh, this is terrible, and this is not ideal, and how did I feel, and this is not great. But gosh, can you help me understand how we got here? Like, what's the barrier? Why are you saying this? And it could be as simple as, oh my gosh, how the distribution is working isn't going to work for us anymore. And so this other company can do that. And I would think, oh my gosh, thank you so much for telling me that. We can actually do what you just said. And I'm so glad you shared it with me. So I've done that in my career, and I think it has been so fruitful, but I never really connected it to kind of that initial experience. But you make a great point in that when you are curious, it opens up this opportunity for dialogue. Now, you may end up in the same spot. I mean, I could have ended up in the spot at Nordstrom where Mike said to me, "Hey, I appreciate all that, and I think that's all great, but this is where we are." And not being afraid to have the dialogue. I think you made that point really well. Um, and I don't know why. Is it because we don't have time, or we don't want to make time, or we want to just move on to what we feel like is our next task that we don't want to have that dialogue? I don't know. And I think this is a good reminder for me as well. Constantly be seeking to understand the why.
Yeah, I think that the answer to your question, I think this is the answer to a lot of questions, is self-preservation, Jennifer. I think that people don't want to have the conversation because number one, they are afraid of losing something, losing time, losing energy and having the conversation, losing respect. I'm afraid of losing something, or I'm trying to hide something. I'm trying to hide the fact I'm intimidated by you coming in and maybe taking my job. I'm trying to hide the fact
Mm,
that maybe we're not doing great right now and I don't want to hire you because I'm probably just going to have to lay you off soon. And then that's going to send a signal to everybody else. I'm trying to hide something, or I'm trying to prove something. I'm trying to prove that we're good, that we don't need you, right? There's all
yes,
kinds of things. Self-preservation, Lee, is the reason behind a lot of things of why we're not doing the thing that, like, this would make sense. Why aren't we just having this conversation? There's always that issue behind it. And I'm glad that you're bringing this stuff up. I think that if we look at it from the employer standpoint, there's a lot to be lost by not having these conversations. From the potential employee standpoint, there's also a lot to be lost by not having these
yes,
conversations. So it's important that workers continually work on things and that we continually develop ourselves, that we are wanting to have these conversations, that people are, then rewarded when they have these conversations. We're going to open the dialogue. We better make it worth it. So what do people need to
absolutely.
continually work on in order to, no matter how much experience they have, whether they're fresh out of college, whether, they haven't gone to any college, or whether they're, 30 years in the industry, what do people need to keep working on?
I think, and of course, we always look at ourselves at something like that. I think two things. I think working on self, knowing who you are. And I think that is just a life. I mean, I'm definitely a work in progress. I think we're all works in progress. And I think being open to growing in as an individual, and to your point earlier, challenging your own beliefs and ways of doing things. So here at C3, we do a few indices to have our colleagues understand, who they are and how they're wired. So Kolbe, Kolbe, Kathy Kolbe, we do the Kolbe. We've also done the culture index. And then I'm a huge Patrick Lencioni fan. And so he's got a new product called the Six Types of Working Genius. And all of them, I've taken DISC and a few of the other ones, but I think knowing who you are and how you're wired is a start. So the Colby is something we've done at C3 for decades, and so we're very familiar with it. And I'm a quick start fact finder. So I remember early on when I was at Bernstein Rain, my dear supervisor, who in the beginning I didn't like him, and then it was one of those relationships where I'm like, oh my gosh, you're the best supervisor who I've ever had, because he saw things in me I didn't see in myself, and he was pushing me. And I remember him sitting me down one day and saying, why don't you trust me? And Scott, I was devastated. I was like, oh my gosh, this is a person I respect. I think is so wise. I really look up to. And I said to him, oh my goodness, why are you asking me that? And he said, because you question everything. I said, oh, I didn't have the language for it at the time, but I was seeking to understand, like, okay, so why did we make this decision? And I was seeking to understand from like a strategic standpoint, from a, hey, you heard the client say X and your response was Y. Why did you say that? And so I learned from that experience, and then just living, through the experiences I've had, knowing who you are and being honest about it. Like if I were to interview with somebody today and they were to say, hey, you're going to spend 80% of your time putting together Excel spreadsheets and gathering data and then creating a system for 1,000 people to do that, I would say, I have been delighted to speak to you. I am not your person. And I know that's a funny and extreme answer, but knowing who you are, and it's a lifelong process. And I know if you're a person just graduating college and you're 22, 23, early 20s, whatever, that is, you're early in the process. But being open to knowing who you are. And I've got to tell you, one thing I love about these indices is that two things. Number one, they make you feel, well, the most important thing is I think they make us judge less, and they also make us feel less bad about ourselves. So if I'm working with somebody who's not a quick start, that means they're not somebody who innovates. That tends to be entrepreneurs. They think on their feet. You're probably a quick start. I don't know your Colby, but just based on my conversation with you. And individuals who aren't that, I've seen people say, oh my gosh, they're not very quick. They don't have any good ideas. And it's like, no, that is not their design. And so when you know that about individuals, we have that information, so we judge less. And then if I'm a terrible person putting together spreadsheets, and I know that about myself, I'm going to feel less guilty. It's like, hey, I can do it, and I will do it well, and I will double check my work, but I don't love it, and I'm not great at it. But I think to your point about self-preservation, I think sometimes we try, it's almost like when we're interviewing, we try to hide those things about ourselves because of the self-preservation of like, hey, I really need this job. And then we get into these jobs that we hate and we're like, why am I here? What happened?
And everybody loses.
Yeah.
This is so profound, and I'm so glad you brought this up. We call it knowing yourself to lead yourself well, and you can only give what you possess. If I possess unawareness of myself, I'm not going to be able to give my best to others, and I think that there's a big gap that happens there. And when you're learning about yourself, and I think that as you learn about others, and you said it this way, I kind of say it in the sense of like, you have permission to be you. How many of us
Yes.
walk around feeling permission to just be who we are instead of trying to wear some fake facade of something, trying to be something for somebody else, as opposed to just having permission? I feel permission to be me because you're giving me that. That's
Yes.
liberation and freedom that I don't think a lot of people experience all the time. And I think that if we can create environments of hiring where that is understood and cultivated and cultures do that, then we'll just get so much good out of our people.
So it's so true. And when you asked about when you open up this conversation as it relates to colleagues and how it impacts them, something that our founder and CEO, my boss, Bob, said to me once, which it was one of those things where I'm like, oh my gosh, I never thought of it this way. There was a colleague, and this individual had done something, spectacular, and I wanted to reward her in a way that demonstrated like how grateful we were for this work that she'd done. And so I went to Bob and said, I'd like you to approve a compensation raise. And he said, and I had a presentation and talked to him about the things that she'd done. And he was all in agreement and was like, yes, I like this idea. He said, so is that what she wants? And I was like, what? He said, well, did you talk to her about what she wants in order to feel valued? And like, what type of compensation? Mine was the financial. And he said, but is that what she wants? And I was thinking, oh my gosh, I maybe. He said, ask her what she wants. And I got to tell you, Scott, it opened up a conversation with not only her, but what we do here at C3 is, because I was thinking, hey, if it were me, I would love more money because that's me. And at that moment in my life, that would have been something I would have wanted. For this individual, she said, I'd actually like some more time and I'd like training in this area. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is so important. So as far as it relates to our colleagues, we really want to have an open dialogue. Are we perfect? No, but we strive to have an open dialogue to say, help us understand what you need, what you want, what you value. We do so many interesting things here that I think when you're hired, at least when I was hired and came from a traditional agency, it's like, oh gosh, this making of things and this engineering of toys and engineering, like this is all I didn't even know this was a thing. And so we'll get individuals that come in and they'll be in one role and they'll say, you know what, I'm really interested in learning about this as well. And it isn't like, okay, now you have a different job. It's you've expanded. And so when we can talk to our clients, not only about the marketing part of what we do and the impact as it relates to their consumer and the insights and research, but if somebody says, oh yeah, and by the way, how does that thing get made? And if you also know that, they're like, oh my gosh, this is just amazing. So long answer to your question. I think as it relates to our employees, again, it goes back to having that conversation and being interested and open to what they come back with. And giving them that security to know if they say, yeah, I'm interested in this one thing, I'm not hearing, but I'm not still dedicated to what I'm currently doing. They want to build. We all want to build on, we want to be given the opportunity to build on what we already know and to be more.
Yeah. And that's the growth mindset that I think we're looking for from each other. And I think that opens up a world of opportunities. This has been really good. I hope people are going to pay attention, especially the people in the midst of hiring right now, because I think that there's a lot of key information that needs to happen here. As you know, I think in working with a lot of HR individuals, they get very set in their process and hey, they're just here to, get through a filter. And without that conversation happening, I think people could be missing out on some opportunities for growth. So if people want to get in touch with you and talk more about this idea, where do they find you?
They can go to my LinkedIn. I have my email on my LinkedIn. You can message me through LinkedIn. I'm kind of a LinkedIn junkie, so I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit. So that's the best way to reach me.
Cool. That is awesome. So thank you for being on today. This was really good. I was eager to talk through this conversation because I don't talk about hiring that much, and I think this is a good, relevant topic for a lot of my audience. So I hope they'll take some gold from it like I have and just keep rolling.
Wonderful. I've enjoyed it so much, Scott. Thank you so much for your time and being interested. And it's just been delightful. Thank you.
I just want to reemphasize tell me more about that question that I brought up in the middle of conversing with her about her, opportunity at Nordstrom. Tell me more about that as an opportunity for dialogue. It's the opportunity for people to be heard, valued, and understood, and to also understand how are we going to bridge this gap? Can we bridge this gap? Well, we'll never know unless we have the conversation. Tell me more about that. Think about the win-win, seeking to understand, thinking outside the system. We hear about thinking outside the box. Well, what does it mean to think outside the system? The system that keeps us so blinded at times of opportunities needs to be broken down. I love her thinking. I'm either going to be 27 with a degree or 27 without one. Listening to the noise, listening to the way things are always done, the way that things have to be done is not what this is about. It is about being open. It's about breaking the mold. And it is about figuring out ways to create opportunities for everyone involved. If you want to find out more about me, you can visit skotwaldron.com, where you'll find more episodes. You'll find some freebies on there, and connect with me on LinkedIn. Like, subscribe, comment, and I really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. See you next time on another episode of Unlocked.